Hi, book nerds. My name is Crystal King, and I am the author of two novels. The first is Feast of Sorrow, which is really a book about essentially the man with his name on the oldest known cookbook. He was really the world's first foodie, in a way. I guess you could call him that. And I'm also the author of this brand spanking new book, The Chef's Secret, which is a novel about Bartolomeo Scopi. And he was the world's first celebrity chef. And he was a chef that lived during the Italian Renaissance, and he cooked for several different popes and was the private chef to many popes and cardinals. And so I am going to talk about 10 facts about the chef's secret today. And the cool thing about the chef's secret is that it's all based on real history. So that's what I'm going to talk about, is the history part of it all. So first of all, Bartolomeo Scopi was a real chef. And that is something that I think is very, very cool. He was born in Dumenza, Italy, and he worked for several popes and cardinals. He's best known for his cookbook, L'Opera, which simply means the works of Bartolomeo Scopi. And this is the book here. And he, you can see I've marked it up rather well. This is one of my prized possessions. This is the only English translation. It was translated a few years ago by a man named Terence Scully. And this cookbook, when it came out in 1570, it was really the best-selling cookbook for almost 200 years. There's over 1,000 recipes inside the cookbook, and there are over 900 of those recipes include sugar, was the most used ingredient. The flavors are also very strong. They used a lot of cinnamon and cloves, and rose water was also very popular. And so, Bartolomeo Scopi, he died in 1577, and he left behind a legacy that basically a lot of our Italian cooking is based on. And the cookbook itself is pretty amazing. It has all of these really beautiful woodcuts in them with depictions of kitchens and pictures of how they would make the food on the road, all of the utensils that you would need. Somewhere in here is actually even the first depiction of a fork ever in any book of any kind, which is pretty amazing. So that's the first fact. Bartolomeo Scopi, he was a real chef. So the second fact is that this cookbook is actually dedicated to his nephew, a man named Giovanni. And Giovanni is actually one of the main characters in The Chef's Secret. And this particular cookbook was dedicated to him. Bartolomeo Scopi wanted him to be able to work in the Vatican kitchen or in any kitchen and have all of the tools and the things at his disposal that he might need. And so number two, Giovanni, who is the main character in The Chef's Secret, he was a real person. We know nothing about his life other than the fact that he worked for Bartolomeo and that the cookbook is dedicated to him. The third fact, is that Giovanni Battista Balasso, he is a man that is in the Chef's Secret. He's a cryptologist, and he revolutionized the polyalphabetical cipher. And what a polyalphabetical cipher is that it basically is a code where you take a alphabet and you substitute the letters, and they used a wheel very similar to this one. This is called an Alberti cipher wheel, and you would have a key code that would signify for you where the alphabet should start, and you would use a wheel like this to be able to decipher it. And there's a lot of instructions on how to use an Alberti cipher wheel. This would take a lot of explanation, so I'm not going to go into it here. These particular wheels, if you want a recreation of this or other types of cipher wheels, was made by Creative Craft House. And I found it on Etsy. And they're really beautifully crafted cipher wheels. But Giovanni Battista Balasso, when he started creating his cipher, he was improving upon a previous cipher. that was out there by this man named Alberti. And that's what this is an Alberti cipher wheel. And then Giovanni Battista Balasso has other cryptology methods that he would use that improved upon this. And he so believed in his work that he issued a challenge to anyone to break his ciphers. And one of those ciphers still remains unsolved today. So that's pretty cool, right? Number 4, Pope Marcellus features in my book. He was one of the shortest lived popes. He only lived for 22 days, and he died in almost the same way, that I describe in my book. He wasn't somebody who was into nepotism, unlike many of the other popes at the time who would make all of their nephews and sons cardinals. This particular pope was not into that. He wouldn't even let his nephews visit him at the Vatican. He might have done some really interesting things to reform the church at the time, but he died at the age of 53 and just didn't really amount to too much. But he features prominently in a particular part of my book. There's also, number 5, a comet that shot through the sky in 1577. It was seen all over Europe. The sighting lasted for 74 days. And Johannes Kepler and Tycho Brahe, who are very well-known astronomers, they both observed the comet and for the first time they understood that the comet was not in our own atmosphere, that it was beyond the atmosphere. So that was a pretty significant discovery. But this comet was seen, like I said, for 74 days. People all over the world could see it, or all over Europe could see it. And they included that in many depictions of literature and of art. It was just this amazing sight that remained in the sky. And so that's something else in my book. My fact number 6 is the Villa Farnesina. It's this beautiful summer palazzo on the banks of the Tiber River, or the Tevere, in Rome. And it was a smaller palazzo than some of the others, but very beautifully rendered for Agostino Chigi, who was the wealthiest banker in all of Rome. He employed Raphael to design these gorgeous, beautiful parts of these, to basically paint some of the walls in this palazzo. And you can still see this gorgeous palazzo today. It's one of the hidden gems, I think, of Rome. People don't often go over there to see it, but it's one of my favorite places in Rome. But Chigi was so wealthy that he once held a banquet that basically, to show off how wealthy he was, he had everyone dining on gold and silver plates. And at the end of the meal, he had all of the plates and the silverware thrown into the Tiber so that he could say, you know, I have so much money that basically none of that even matters to him, to me. And people were just aghast at this. And it turned out that later on, he actually had nets underneath all the water to pull up all the silverware and the plates later on. So that was fact number 6. Fact number 7, Domenico Romoli. He had a nickname of panuto, which is an oiled bread that was one of his recipes. He was a steward for the Medicis in Florence, and he was a real person that lived. He figures prominently in my book as a villain. And he had a manual called La Singular Dottrina, which means the singular doctrine, which was published in 1560, and it was a book for stewards. And there was some recipes in there which basically copied other recipes that had already been in existence, but it had some really amazing organization of very complex elements of a dinner service and how you would serve nobility, somebody as prominent as the Medicis. And he really helped set our understanding of what that might have been like to run a princely household. And number 8, Scapi was a celebrated chef known for his banquets. And when he wrote the cookbook, he has very many lavish descriptions of these banquets, including peacocks that looked real, but that were roasted, and pies or castles made out of pastry that birds would fly out of, and these really amazing banquets and meals. But he ended up becoming a chef to Pope Pius V. And Pope Pius V was really looking to get rid of all luxury. He wanted to only eat very simple foods: bread, apples, eggs, gruel, basically. And Scopi, it was a common thing that you would actually create basically create a banquet to celebrate the coronation of the Pope, right, on his anniversary. And so Pope Pius on the 5th, Scopi started to prepare this anniversary banquet for him, and Pius got wind of it and made him cancel it. But Scopi was really not happy about this. It was probably many months of planning, lots of money wasted. And so he's printed out the entire menu, what would have been eaten at that menu, at that banquet, in his cookbook. And there's over 1,000 dishes that are included. These amazing gelatins that were made of the Pope's face, like just really insane descriptions. And he couldn't cook any of it. Number 9, the Rialto Bridge in Venice was actually a wooden bridge originally. It used to open up for boats, and they could pass beneath it. It was destroyed in a fire, and then they built the bridge that you see today, the beautiful white bridge. If you're not sure where the Rialto Bridge is, it's in Venice. It's the most iconic bridge in all of Italy, probably, and one of the most iconic bridges in the entire world. It was originally first built in 1181, and it burned or collapsed. It actually collapsed under the weight of people many times until the present bridge that stands today. It was built in 1591. So the Rialto Bridge in my book actually is a wooden bridge still. And number 10, another fact about the chef's secret is that I include a lot of sugar sculptures in this book. In the Renaissance, they loved sugar. Having the ability to purchase sugar and use it liberally was a sign of wealth. And sugar sculptures were all of the rage, but they didn't have white sugar for almost 100 years after the book that I wrote was set. So not until in the mid 1600s was white sugar more of a commodity. At the time that I'm writing, they had many different kinds of sugar, but most of the time they were probably not white.